Let me ask you a question. Are you the same person you were 7 years ago? I mean, physically, almost none of your cells are the same. So what is it that makes you, you? This isn't just some biological riddle. It's the very heart of an ancient philosophical puzzle called the Ship of Theseus. And in this explainer, we're going to break down this incredible thought experiment and see how it completely challenges our definition of identity.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to kick things off with the most personal example there is, you. Then we'll jump back to ancient Greece to dig up the original puzzle. After that, we'll grab some philosophical tools to help us think, see how this paradox pops up all over the modern world, and finally, try to pull it all together to answer that huge question, what is identity? So, we're starting, not with dusty old philosophy books, but with cutting-edge biology. Why? Because it turns out you are a walking, talking, living version of the Ship of Theseus paradox.
Seriously, think about it. Is the you today the same as the you from years ago? Now, you might have heard that old idea that your body completely replaces itself every 7 years. And while that's not exactly how it works, the reality of how your cells are constantly turning over is honestly even more mind-blowing.
Just look at this. Your body is basically a ship under constant repair, but with different parts getting swapped out at totally different speeds. The cells lining your gut? They're brand new every few days. Your red blood cells last about 4 months. Even your fat cells get replaced over the course of a decade. It's this continuous, dynamic, and amazing process of renewal.
And get this, by sheer numbers alone, about 90% of the cells your body replaces every single day are red blood cells. So yeah, some super important parts, like certain neurons in your brain, are with you for life, but the vast majority of your physical self is in a constant state of flux. So if your parts are always changing, what makes you, you?
This idea of a constantly changing identity isn't new, not at all. To really get to the bottom of it, we have to go back to the original puzzle, a story about a famous Greek ship, and the historian who made it philosophically immortal.
So the story starts around the 1st century with the historian Plutarch. He wrote about the ship of the hero Theseus, which the Athenians preserved for hundreds of years as a memorial. But it was a 17th century philosopher, Thomas Hobbes, who took this simple story and turned it into a full-blown philosophical crisis.
So here's the core of it. The Athenians kept the ship in good shape by replacing old, rotting wooden planks with new ones. Over the years, they did this so many times that eventually not a single original piece of wood was left. The big question is the ship in the harbor still the Ship of Theseus?
Just to make things even more confusing, Hobbes added a brilliant twist. He said, okay, imagine some guy saved all the old, discarded planks. Once the refurbished ship was totally complete with new wood, this collector takes all the original planks and builds a second ship. So now you have 2 ships. Which one is the real Ship of Theseus?
And this is the deadlock. Your gut tells you the ship in the harbor is the original because small, gradual changes don't just erase identity. But your brain also tells you the reassembled ship is the original because it's made of all the original parts. They can't both be the real Ship of Theseus, but both have a really strong claim. That, my friends, is the paradox.
So how do we get out of this mess? Well, philosophers have come up with different ways of thinking about what identity even is, and one of the most powerful toolkits we have comes from an ancient Greek you've definitely heard of.
Aristotle's solution was to look beyond just the physical stuff. He argued that to really understand something, you have to consider 4 causes. There's the material cause, what it's made of, the formal cause, its design or blueprint, the final cause, its purpose, and the efficient cause, who made it. Suddenly, identity isn't just about the wood anymore.
For Aristotle, the real key was the formal cause, the blueprint. As long as the ship maintained its design and its structure, it was still the Ship of Theseus. The wood was less important than the idea of the ship itself. It's a pretty compelling solution. Identity lies in the pattern, not in the parts.
Now, this might all seem like abstract philosophical games, but I promise you, this exact paradox plays out in the real world all the time, in fields you would never, ever expect.
Take a look at how we preserve historical artifacts. In the West, the Venice Charter pretty much argues that the original material is everything. You have to preserve the old planks. But in Japan, the Ise Grand Shrine, one of their holiest sites, is completely torn down and rebuilt with new wood every 20 years. For them, identity is preserved through the ritual of rebuilding, not the original timber. That's 2 cultures with 2 totally different answers to the same paradox.
This is amazing.
Software engineers deal with this every single day. When they're updating old clunky systems, they use a strategy they literally call the strangler fig or Ship of Theseus pattern. Instead of one big risky rewrite, they replace the code piece by piece, function by function, until a brand new application emerges from the old one, often without the user having a clue.
And of course, the idea has seeped into pop culture. One of the best examples comes from the British sitcom Only Fools and Horses, where this character, Trigger, proudly says he's owned the same broom for 2 decades, even though it's had 17 new heads and 14 new handles. It's the paradox in its simplest and funniest form.
Even massive companies are ships of Theseus. Think about Netflix. It started as a DVD by mail service, then it became a streaming platform, then it became a content studio. It has replaced every single plank of its business, but we still call it Netflix. Compare that to Kodak, which held on so tightly to its original planks, film, and ended up losing its identity and its business when the world went digital.
So, after all this, biology, philosophy, software, business, what can we actually say about identity? Where does this leave us?
Well, it seems pretty clear that identity isn't just one simple thing. It's a combination of factors. Sometimes the material matters most. Other times it's the design, the purpose, or the continuous story that connects the past to the present. We weigh these things differently depending on what we're talking about, whether it's a person, a ship, or a company.
You know, maybe the biggest takeaway is this. The paradox isn't a bug. It's a feature of how identity works. Identity isn't some static object we can put under glass in a museum. It's the continuous story we tell, the narrative that connects all the changing pieces into a coherent whole. It's not a state of being, it's a constant process of becoming.
Which leaves us with one final and pretty urgent question. This ancient paradox is no longer just a thought experiment. As we develop technologies that can replace parts of our own minds with computer chips, we are all becoming ships of Theseus. At what point do we stop being us? This puzzle about an old boat has suddenly become a blueprint for the future of what it means to be human.